Dr. Sarah Chun had been monitoring the Deep Space Communications Array for 3 years, and she had never seen anything like the signal that appeared on her screens at 3:47 a.m. on a cold Tuesday morning in March 2157. The rhythmic pulses emanated from the direction of Mars, but that was impossible. Mars was dead, had been dead for billions of years. She rubbed her eyes, certain that fatigue was playing tricks on her. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, and the overnight shift at the Arecibo 7 facility always felt endless. But the signal remained, pulsing with mathematical precision that no natural phenomenon could produce. Computer, run full spectrum analysis on incoming transmission, Mars Vector, she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper in the empty control room. The AI's synthetic voice filled the chamber. Analysis complete. Signal demonstrates artificial origin. Complexity suggests advanced technological source. Estimated transmission power, 847 terawatts. Sarah's blood ran cold. 847 terawatts. That was more power than Earth's entire electrical grid could generate. She reached for her secure communicator with trembling fingers. This is Dr. Chun at Arecibo 7. I need to speak with Director Morrison immediately. We have a Code 7 situation. Code 7. First contact. Within minutes. Her small facility buzzed with activity as emergency protocols activated across the globe. The signal continued its steady rhythm, each pulse lasting exactly 1.618 seconds. The golden ratio. Someone or something was trying to communicate using mathematical principles that transcended language. Director Morrison's weathered face appeared on the main screen 47 minutes later, his usually neat silver hair disheveled from being awakened. Behind him, Sarah could see the control chaos of the Global Defense Initiative's primary command center in Geneva. Sarah, I need you to tell me everything. Leave nothing out. She explained the signal's characteristics, its impossible power output, and the mathematical precision of its timing. As she spoke, Morrison's expression grew increasingly grave. Sir, she concluded, this isn't just first contact. Whoever is sending this signal has technology far beyond our current capabilities. If they're hostile, let's not jump to conclusions, Morrison interrupted, though his tone suggested he was already considering the worst-case scenario. I'm dispatching a full analysis team to your location. Until then, maintain monitoring and begin attempting basic mathematical responses. Start with prime numbers, then move to more complex sequences. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of activity. Teams of cryptographers, linguists, and physicists descended upon the facility. The signal continued unchanged, ignoring all attempts at communication. Then, at exactly 2200 hours Greenwich Mean Time, it stopped. The silence felt deafening. Dr. James Wright, the head cryptographer, looked up from his workstation. It's been exactly 18 hours and 13 minutes. That's not coincidental. Sarah nodded, studying the data patterns. The duration follows the same mathematical principles as the pulse timing. Fibonacci sequences, golden ratio derivatives. They're definitely trying to establish mathematical common ground. Or they're finished gathering intelligence. Morrison's voice cut through the analysis. He had remained connected throughout the investigation, coordinating with world leaders and military commanders. Sarah, I need you to prepare for possibility that this signal wasn't a greeting. It might have been a scan. Before she could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The Mars monitoring array lit up with dozens of new contacts, objects moving at impossible speeds, heading directly toward Earth. Sir, Sarah's voice cracked. We have multiple bogies inbound from Mars. Estimated time of arrival, 72 hours. Morrison's image flickered as emergency broadcasts began overriding communication channels worldwide. All personnel, this is Director Morrison. Global Defense Initiative is now at DEFCON 1. This is not a drill. We are officially at war. Colonel Marcus Rodriguez had commanded the International Space Defense Force for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for the briefing he received in the underground bunker beneath the Pentagon. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and intelligence officials from every major nation on Earth. What you're about to see, Morrison announced, was captured by our deep space telescopes over the past 48 hours. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display filled the center of the room. Mars appeared in three-dimensional detail, its familiar red surface rotating slowly. But as the view shifted to show subsurface scans, gasps echoed throughout the chamber. Beneath Mars' crust lay a vast network of caverns and tunnels stretching across the entire planet. The underground cities were massive, some larger than entire continents on Earth. Bioluminescent structures pulsed with alien light, connected by transportation networks that defied human understanding. "My God," whispered General Patricia Hayes, the U.S. Joint Chiefs Chairman. "How long have they been down there?" Dr. Elizabeth Kovac, the expedition's lead xenobiologist, stepped forward. "Based on the geological evidence and the scale of construction, we estimate the civilization has been developing for at least 50,000 years. They've been completely hidden from our surface observations." The hologram shifted to show the approaching invasion fleet. Sleek vessels, each the size of a small city, moved through space with an elegant grace that made human spacecraft look primitive by comparison. Their hulls seemed to absorb light, making them nearly invisible except for the distinctive energy signatures they emitted. 17 ships, Rodriguez noted, his military mind automatically cataloging the threat. Each one could carry thousands of troops and equipment. "Colonel," Morrison interrupted, "we need to discuss Earth's defensive capabilities. How long can we hold out?" Rodriguez stood and activated his own display. Earth's defensive grid appeared, orbital stations, lunar bases, and the recently completed Mars monitoring outpost. It looked impressive until compared to the approaching Martian fleet. "With current resources, we can delay them but not stop them," he admitted. "Our best weapons are nuclear, but these ships show energy shielding that could potentially absorb or redirect such attacks. We're dealing with technology that's centuries ahead of our own." Dr. Kovac cleared her throat. "There's something else. The signal patterns we've been analyzing suggest they've been monitoring our communications for decades. They know our capabilities, our weaknesses, our military protocols. This isn't just an invasion. It's a calculated conquest." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's defenders were not just outgunned. They were fighting an enemy that had been studying them for years. "What about their motives?" asked General Hayes. "Do we know why they're attacking now?" Morrison gestured to a series of environmental data charts. "Our analysis suggests Mars is dying. The planet's core is cooling faster than previously thought, and their underground cities are becoming uninhabitable. They need a new home, and Earth is a logical choice. So this is a war for survival," Rodriguez concluded. "That makes them even more dangerous. They have nothing to lose." Dr. Kovac nodded grimly. "And everything to gain. Our preliminary biological scans suggest they're carbon-based life forms, similar enough to humans that they could potentially adapt to Earth's environment. But for them to survive here, we'd have to be eliminated or enslaved." The briefing continued for another 3 hours as military planners outlined Earth's defensive strategy. The plan was desperate but comprehensive. Evacuate major population centers, establish fortified defensive positions, and prepare for prolonged guerrilla war if the initial defense failed. "We have one advantage," Rodriguez noted as the meeting concluded. "They've been underground for millennia. They might struggle with Earth's open environments, weather patterns, and atmospheric conditions. We need to exploit that." Morrison stood, his face etched with determination. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have 48 hours to prepare for the greatest challenge in human history. The survival of our species depends on our actions in the next 2 days." As the officials filed out, Rodriguez remained behind with Morrison and Dr. Kovac. The weight of command pressed heavily on his shoulders. "Marcus," Morrison said quietly, "I need you to prepare for the possibility that our conventional defenses will fail. We're already working on evacuation protocols for critical personnel and resources. If Earth falls, humanity's survival might depend on the colonies we can establish elsewhere." Rodriguez nodded, understanding the unspoken order. Prepare for victory, but plan for defeat. The Martian fleet arrived ahead of schedule. Rodriguez watched from the command center of Luna Base as the alien vessels materialized in Earth's outer atmosphere, their dark hulls becoming visible only as they began glowing with re-entry heat. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. 17 falling stars that heralded the end of human dominance in the solar system. All stations, this is command. Hostiles are beginning atmospheric entry. All defensive positions, prepare for contact. The first wave of Earth's defense consisted of orbital missile platforms and fighter squadrons launched from bases on the Moon and in Earth's Lagrange points. Rodriguez watched the tactical display as hundreds of projectiles streaked toward the descending Martian ships. The aliens' defensive systems activated with devastating efficiency. Energy shields flared around each vessel, deflecting or absorbing the incoming fire. Worse, the ships began returning fire with weapons that seemed to tear holes in space itself, destroying human defenses with surgical precision. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, the tactical officer, "we're losing orbital platforms faster than we can deploy them. Enemy weapons are some kind of directed energy system we've never encountered." Rodriguez studied the battle data, streaming across his screens. The Martian weapons weren't just advanced. They operated on principles of physics that human science barely understood. Each shot seemed to create a localized distortion in space-time, allowing the energy to bypass conventional shielding. "Redirect all remaining orbital assets to defensive positions around population centers," he ordered, "and activate the ground-based defense grid." As the Martian ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their true size became apparent. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and what appeared to be landing bays. They moved with impossible grace, their alien propulsion systems leaving no visible exhaust trails. The first ship touched down in the Nevada desert, its landing creating a small earthquake that registered on seismographs worldwide. Within minutes, the vessel's hull began opening, revealing the first glimpse of the beings that had traveled millions of miles to conquer Earth. Dr. Kovac had been monitoring the landing from her position at the CDC's Emergency Command Center. The moment the first Martian appeared on the video feed, she felt her breath catch. They were humanoid but clearly alien, tall and slender, with elongated limbs that spoke of evolution in low gravity. Their skin had a reddish tint that seemed to shift and change in response to their environment. Most striking were their eyes, large, multifaceted organs that suggested they could perceive far more of the electromagnetic spectrum than humans. "They're beautiful," she whispered, then immediately felt guilty for the thought. These beings were invaders, conquerors who had come to destroy everything she held dear. The Martians emerging from the landed ship moved with coordinated precision, establishing perimeter around their vessel, while others began deploying strange, organic-looking structures that seemed to grow from the ground itself. Within hours, they had created a fortified base that pulsed with alien energy. Rodriguez received reports as the remaining 16 ships landed across the globe. Each chose strategically important locations, near major cities, industrial centers, and communication hubs. The pattern was clear. They intended to cripple Earth's infrastructure before launching their main assault. "Colonel," Park reported, "we're getting initial casualty reports from the landing sites. The ships didn't target civilians directly, but the energy discharges from their arrival killed thousands." Rodriguez closed his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of each lost life. "What about our ground forces?" "Converging on all landing sites, but sir..." Park hesitated. "The Martians are establishing some kind of energy barriers around their positions. Our forces can't get close enough to engage." As if to emphasize the point, the main screen lit up with a live feed from the Nevada site. A battalion of human tanks was approaching the Martian perimeter when a wave of energy erupted from their base. The tanks simply stopped. Their engines shut down, their electronics failed, and their crews were forced to abandon their vehicles. "They're using some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon," Dr. Kovac observed from her remote connection. "But it's more sophisticated than anything we've developed. They can target specific systems while leaving others intact." Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine. The Martians weren't just conquering Earth. They were doing it with minimal loss of life. They were being methodical, precise, almost gentle. "Why aren't they killing more of us?" he asked. Dr. Kovac's expression grew troubled. "I think they want us alive. The question is, what for?" The answer came 3 days later when the first human delegation was invited to meet with the Martian command structure. Rodriguez found himself part of a small group that included Morrison, Dr. Kovac, and representatives from the world's major governments. They approached the Nevada landing site under a flag of truce, their vehicle escorted by strange, floating Martian constructs that seemed to be made of living metal. The Martian base had grown exponentially since the initial landing. Organic structures twisted skyward like alien trees, while energy conduits pulsed with bioluminescent light. The air itself seemed to hum with power, and Rodriguez could feel the hair on his arms standing up from the electromagnetic fields. Their escort led them to a central structure that resembled a vast flower made of crystalline material. As they approached, the petals opened to reveal a chamber that defied human understanding of architecture. The walls curved and flowed like water, while the ceiling displayed what appeared to be a real-time view of the Martian underground cities. The Martian leader awaited them at the center of the chamber. She, for something about her bearing suggested femininity, stood nearly 3 meters tall, her reddish skin pulsing with patterns of light that seemed to convey emotion. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in their minds rather than through sound. "Welcome, children of Earth. I am Zarthol of the Deep Cities. I speak for the Martian Collective." Rodriguez felt a moment of disorientation as the alien's thoughts merged with his own. The sensation was intimate and terrifying, like having someone else's memories overlaid on his consciousness. "You wonder why we have come," Zarthol continued. "The answer is simple: necessity. Our world dies, and we must find new life beneath new skies." Morrison stepped forward, his diplomatic training overriding his fear. "We're willing to discuss terms for coexistence. Earth is large enough for both our species." The Martian leader's skin flickered with what might have been amusement. "Your species thinks in terms of territory and borders. We think in terms of survival and evolution. There can be no coexistence because we require the same resources: water, fertile soil, and an atmosphere that supports carbon-based life." "You're talking about genocide," Dr. Kovac said quietly. "We are talking about evolution," Zarthol corrected. "Your species has potential, but it is young and chaotic. We have watched your development for centuries, seen your wars, your destruction of your own environment. Left unchecked, you will destroy this world as you have already begun to do." Rodriguez felt anger rising in his chest. "So you've appointed yourselves our replacements?" "Not replacements. Successors. We offer your species a choice: integration or extinction. Those who prove themselves worthy can join our collective consciousness. The rest will be allowed to fade peacefully." The casual way she discussed the elimination of billions of lives made Rodriguez's blood run cold. But there was something else in her mental voice, a note of sadness, even regret. "You think us cruel," Zarthol observed, reading his thoughts. "But we are not conquerors in the way you understand. We are gardeners, cultivating life across the cosmos. Your species has potential, but it must be guided, shaped, integrated into something greater." "What kind of integration?" Morrison asked. The chamber around them shifted, and suddenly they were experiencing visions of the Martian underground cities. They saw beings that had once been individual creatures merged into a collective consciousness, their thoughts and experiences shared across vast networks of minds. Technology and biology were seamlessly integrated, creating a civilization that seemed to operate as a single, vast organism. "This is what we offer," Zarthol explained. "Unity, purpose, evolution beyond the limitations of individual existence. Your scientists, your artists, your greatest thinkers, they will become part of something infinite." Rodriguez saw the seductive appeal of the offer, but also its terrible cost. Humanity would survive, but it would no longer be human. "How many?" he asked. "How many would you integrate?" "Those who prove themselves worthy. Perhaps 1 in 10,000. The rest would live out their lives in peace, tended by our collective until natural death claims them. No violence, no suffering. Simply a gradual transition to a new order." The meeting continued for hours, with the Martian leader explaining their philosophy and their plans for Earth. They intended to terraform the planet gradually, making it more suitable for their physiology while maintaining enough of the current ecosystem to support the remaining human population. As the delegation prepared to leave, Zarthol made one final statement. You have 7 of your days to consider our offer. Gather your leaders, your wisest minds, and decide. Will humanity evolve, or will it choose extinction? The emergency session of the United Nations lasted 72 hours. Rodriguez sat in the gallery, watching as representatives from every nation debated the fate of the human species. The discussions were heated, desperate, and ultimately futile. We cannot simply surrender our humanity, declared the representative from Brazil. If we accept their offer, we become nothing more than pets in an alien zoo. But the alternative is extinction, countered the delegate from Japan. At least this way, some part human culture and knowledge survives. Rodriguez had seen the military assessments. Earth's combined forces had managed to inflict exactly 0 casualties on the Martian forces during the initial engagement. Every weapon in humanity's arsenal had proven useless against alien technology that operated on principles human science couldn't even comprehend. Dr. Kovac had been working around the clock, trying to understand the biological implications of the Martian integration process. Her findings were disturbing. The process isn't just technological, she explained to the assembled delegates. It's biological. The Martians have evolved beyond individual consciousness. They exist as a collective organism, sharing thoughts, memories, and experiences across their entire species. What would happen to those who were integrated? Asked the Secretary General. They would retain their individual memories and personalities, but these would become part of a vast shared consciousness. In essence, they would gain immortality and access to the combined knowledge of an entire civilization, but they would no longer be human in any meaningful sense. Rodriguez watched the debates with growing frustration. The politicians were arguing about philosophical concepts while the Martians' deadline approached. Every hour spent in discussion was an hour closer to the extinction of the human race. On the 4th day, a new development changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chun, the scientist who had first detected the Martian signal, burst into the session with data that made everyone fall silent. I've been analyzing the Martian communications, she announced. There's something they haven't told us. The integration process isn't voluntary for them. It's evolutionary. They began as individual creatures like us, but they were forced to merge into a collective consciousness to survive the death of their world. The chamber erupted in whispers as the implications sank in. Are you saying they're not doing this by choice? Morrison asked. I'm saying they've forgotten they have a choice, Jim replied. The collective consciousness has been in control for so long that individual thought has become foreign to them. They're offering us what they think is salvation, but it's actually their own form of imprisonment. Rodriguez felt a spark of hope. If the Martians were trapped in their collective existence, perhaps there was a way to break free for both species. What do you propose? He asked. Chin activated a holographic display showing the structure of Martian consciousness. Their collective is maintained by a network of biological nodes throughout their underground cities. If we could disrupt that network, we might be able to restore individual consciousness to the Martians. That's assuming they won't be restored, Morrison pointed out. Some might, Chin argued. I've detected fluctuations in their collective consciousness, moments where individual thoughts seem to break through. There's resistance within their system. Rodriguez stood, his military instincts taking over. You're talking about an operation to reach Mars and assault their home cities. That's impossible with current technology. Not impossible, Chin said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Difficult, dangerous, and probably suicidal, but not impossible. We have one advantage. They don't expect resistance. They think we've already accepted defeat. The debate that followed was fierce, but ultimately, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender its independence, even if the alternative was extinction. They would fight, not just for their own survival, but for the liberation of both species. Rodriguez found himself appointed commander of what would be called the Liberation Mission, a desperate assault on the Martian homeworld using technology that had been developed in secret over the past decade. The plan was audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Using a combination of human spacecraft and captured Martian technology, Rodriguez would lead a small force to Mars while the remaining Earth forces created a diversion by attacking the Martian bases on Earth. The strike team consisted of 50 volunteers from various military and scientific backgrounds. Each had been selected for their expertise and their psychological stability. The mission would test both to their limits. Dr. Kovac had insisted on joining the mission, arguing that they would need her biological expertise to understand the Martian collective consciousness. Rodriguez had tried to dissuade her, but she was determined. "If we're going to save both species," she said, "we need to understand what we're dealing with." The spacecraft they used was a hybrid of human and Martian technology, reverse engineered from debris collected after the initial landings. It was experimental, dangerous, and their only hope of reaching Mars undetected. As Earth fell behind them, Rodriguez gathered his team in the ship's briefing room. The faces looking back at him were grim but determined. "We all know this is a one-way mission," he began. "Even if we succeed, we may not have enough fuel to return to Earth. But if we fail, both humanity and the Martians will remain trapped in their current fate." Lieutenant Commander Park raised her hand. "Sir, what if we're wrong? What if the Martians don't want to be liberated?" Rodriguez had wrestled with the same question. "Then we'll have failed honorably. But I believe Dr. Chen is right. Deep down, every conscious being wants freedom." The journey to Mars took 18 days, during which they monitored communication from Earth. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Martian forces had begun the integration process, selecting humans for absorption into their collective consciousness. The screams of those being processed could be heard on emergency radio frequencies. "They're not just integrating the willing," Dr. Kovac reported after analyzing the transmissions. "They're taking people by force." Rodriguez felt his resolve harden. Whatever doubts he'd had about the mission evaporated. They were no longer just fighting for freedom. They were fighting to prevent the enslavement of the human race. As they approached Mars, the planet's true nature became apparent. The surface was a wasteland, but beneath it lay a civilization that spanned continents. The underground cities pulsed with energy, their bioluminescent structures creating patterns that could be seen from space. "My God," whispered Dr. Kovac. "It's beautiful and terrible." Rodriguez studied the tactical display. The Martian defense network was formidable, but it was designed to protect against external threats, not internal disruption. Their plan was to land on the surface and use captured Martian technology to breach the underground cities. "Remember," he told his team as they prepared for landing, "we're not here to destroy their civilization. We're here to liberate it." The landing was harrowing. Martian defense systems detected their approach, but the hybrid technology confused their targeting systems long enough for the strike team to reach the surface. They landed in a canyon that provided natural cover, quickly deploying their equipment before Martian forces could respond. Dr. Chen had identified the primary collective consciousness node, a massive structure at the heart of the largest underground city. To reach it, they would have to penetrate kilometers of defended tunnels and face an enemy that could coordinate its response with perfect efficiency. "It's not just a building," Chen explained as they prepared for the assault. "It's a living organism. The entire city is connected to it, and it's connected to every Martian in the collective. When we attack it, we'll be attacking their very souls." Rodriguez checked his equipment one final time. The weapon they carried was itself a hybrid, human explosives guided by Martian biotechnology. It would seek out the organic components of the collective consciousness and disrupt them without causing permanent damage. "If this works," he said, "we'll see the first free Martian thoughts in 50,000 years." The assault began at dawn, Mars time. The Martian tunnels were a maze of organic corridors that seemed to pulse with their own life. Rodriguez led his team through passages that twisted and branched like blood vessels, always moving toward the heart of the collective consciousness. The defenders they encountered were unlike anything human forces had faced before. The Martians moved with perfect coordination, their actions synchronized by the collective mind. They fought with weapons that seemed to grow from their bodies, energy constructs that could reshape themselves instantly to counter human tactics. But they also fought with restraint. Even in combat, the Martians sought to capture rather than kill, try and preserve human life for eventual integration. This gave Rodriguez's team a crucial advantage. They could use lethal force while their enemies held back. "They're not trying to kill us," observed Sergeant Maria Santos, the team's demolitions expert. "They're hurting us." Rodriguez realized she was right. The Martian defenders were subtly guiding their movement, trying to channel them into areas where they could be captured. It was a sophisticated strategy, but it revealed a weakness in their collective thinking. They can't understand individual sacrifice, he told his team. They're trying to preserve us because they can't conceive of choosing death over integration. The deeper they went, the more alien the environment became. The tunnels were lined with structures that seemed to breathe, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that made the team's eyes water. The air itself felt thick and charged, as if it were alive. Dr. Kovac was analyzing everything, her instruments detecting biological processes that defied human understanding. The entire city is a single organism, she reported. Every structure, every tunnel. It's all connected at the cellular level. How do we fight something like that? Rodriguez asked. We don't fight it, she replied. We heal it. As they approached the central chamber, the Martian resistance intensified. Waves of defenders emerged from the walls themselves, their bodies flowing like liquid metal as they transformed into combat configurations. The battle was fierce and surreal, with weapons that bent reality and defenses that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Rodriguez lost 3 team members in the assault, their bodies simply disappearing into the organic walls of the city. But he pressed on, driven by the knowledge that failure meant the end of freedom for both species. The central chamber was vast, a cathedral-like space that stretched beyond the limits of human vision. At its heart stood the collective consciousness node, a structure that seemed to be part machine, part organism, and part something else entirely. It pulsed with the combined thoughts of an entire civilization, its surface covered in neural networks that sparkled with synaptic activity. It's beautiful, Dr. Kovac whispered, her instruments detecting the incredible complexity of the structure. And it's an agony. Rodriguez could feel it too, a sense of desperate longing emanating from the collective mind. Despite their apparent unity, the Martians were suffering. The collective consciousness was a prison as much as it was a sanctuary. Sarah, he called to Dr. Chun, deploy the disruptor. The weapon they had brought was small, barely larger than a human hand, but its effects would be profound. As Chun activated it, the device began to emit a specific frequency that would interfere with the neural networks maintaining the collective consciousness. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. The entire city began to convulse, its organic structures writhing in apparent pain. The collective consciousness node flared with energy, its surface crackling with electrical discharges. And then, for the first time in 50,000 years, individual Martian voices began to break through the collective silence. Who am I? What do we become? The pain, make it stop? Rodriguez watched in wonder as the collective consciousness began to fracture. Individual Martians throughout the city were experiencing their own thoughts for the first time in millennia. The process was dramatic and beautiful, like watching a species being reborn. But the collective consciousness fought back. The remaining unified portions of the Martian mind turned their full attention to human intruders, seeking to eliminate the source of the disruption. Sir, Park reported, we're being surrounded. The entire city is converging on our position. Rodriguez looked at his remaining team members, barely 20 survivors out of the original 50. They had accomplished their mission, but they were about to pay the ultimate price. Hold your positions, he ordered. We need to give the disruptor time to work. The battle in the central chamber was unlike anything in human history. Rodriguez and his team fought desperately against waves of Martian defenders, while the collective consciousness slowly tore itself apart around them. The ancient structure shuddered with each fracture in the unified mind, its organic components writhing in apparent agony. But something miraculous was happening. As individual Martians broke free from the collective, they began to remember who they had been before the Great Joining. Some turned against their former collective, horrified by what they had become. Others fled in confusion, overwhelmed by the return of individual consciousness. The disruptor is working, Dr. Chin reported, her instruments tracking the growing cascade of individual awakenings. The collective is losing cohesion. Rodriguez could see it in the defenders' actions. Where once they had moved with perfect coordination, now there was hesitation, confusion, even conflict among the Martian forces. Some continued to fight, driven by the remaining collective programming, while others stood frozen, struggling to understand their own thoughts. A new voice entered Rodriguez's mind, different from the collective's unified tone. It was hesitant, uncertain, but unmistakably individual. "Please, help us." Rodriguez turned to see a Martian warrior who had been attacking moments before. The being's eyes, those large, multifaceted organs, now showed confusion and fear rather than the cold efficiency of the collective. I remember being alone, being myself. What did we do? What did we become?" Dr. Kovac approached the Martian cautiously, her instruments detecting the dramatic changes in the being's neural patterns. "The collective is breaking down," she reported. "Individual personalities are reasserting themselves." More Martians began to break free, their minds struggling to process 50,000 years of collective memories. The chaos was overwhelming. Beings who had existed as part of a unified whole suddenly finding themselves alone in their own consciousness. The collective consciousness node itself began to change. The neural networks that had bound an entire civilization together were rewiring themselves, creating new patterns that allowed for individual thought while maintaining some level of connection. It was evolution in real time, a species transforming itself before their eyes. "We understand now," came a new voice, stronger and more coherent than the others. Rodriguez recognized it as Zarathol, the Martian leader they had met on Earth. But now her mental voice carried emotion, uncertainty, even regret. "We imprison ourselves to escape the death of our world. But in saving our bodies, we lost our souls. You have given us back what we sacrificed." Rodriguez felt a moment of profound relief. The mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. But the immediate crisis was far from over. "What about Earth?" he asked. "Your forces are still there, still carrying out the integration process." "They will stop," Zarathol assured him, "as our collective consciousness dissolves. The invasion fleet will lose its coordination. But the damage already done, we must find a way to repair it." The central chamber had become a scene of incredible transformation. Martians who had been part of the collective for millennia were rediscovering their individual identities. Some wept, a purely biological response that the collective had suppressed. Others stood in wonder, experiencing private thoughts for the first time in their remembered existence. Dr. Kovac was studying the process with fascination. "This is the most significant evolutionary event in recorded history," she said. "An entire species is literally becoming free." But with freedom came responsibility. The Martians had to face the consequences of their actions as a collective. The invasion of Earth, the planned integration of humanity, the centuries of hidden observation, all of it had been done without individual choice or moral consideration. "We must make amends," Zarathol said, her thoughts heavy with newfound guilt. "But how does one species apologize to another for attempted genocide?" Rodriguez looked around the chamber at his surviving team members. They had lost half their people in the assault, but they had accomplished something unprecedented. The liberation of an entire civilization from its own imposed prison. "We start by working together," he said. "Your people need to find a new way to survive, and our people need to heal from what happened. Maybe we can help each other." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, with Rodriguez's team traveling aboard a Martian vessel piloted by newly awakened individuals. The ship was a marvel of biotechnology, its organic systems responding to the crew's thoughts and emotions in ways that human technology couldn't match. During the journey, they established communication with Earth and learned that the invasion had indeed stopped. The Martian forces had simply shut down their operations and withdrawn to their landing sites, apparently waiting for new orders that never came. The integration process had been halted, but not before thousands of humans had been absorbed into the collective consciousness. The question now was whether this process could be reversed. "We believe it can," Zarathol explained. "The integrated humans exist as individual consciousnesses within our collective memory. With the barriers breaking down, they should be able to return to their bodies." Dr. Kovac was skeptical. The human brain wasn't designed for collective consciousness. The integration process may have caused irreversible damage. "We will try," Zarathol insisted. "We owe your species that much." The return to Earth was both triumphant and somber. Rodriguez's team had succeeded in their mission, but the cost had been enormous. Half the strike force had been lost, and Earth itself bore the scars of the brief but devastating invasion. The first priority was reversing the integration process. The Martians had built specialized facilities at each landing site, using their advanced biotechnology to separate the absorbed human consciousnesses from collective memory. It was a delicate process, requiring careful extraction of individual thoughts and memories while preserving the integrity of both human and Martian minds. Dr. Kovac worked closely with Zarthol and other freed Martians to develop the restoration protocols. The process was unlike anything in human medicine. Part surgery, part psychology, part technology that bordered on the supernatural. The human consciousness is remarkably resilient, Kovac reported after the first successful restoration. Even after integration, individual personalities remain intact. It's as if the collective memory preserves them like insects in amber. The first restored human was Dr. James Wright, the cryptographer who had been captured during the initial invasion. He emerged from the restoration chamber confused but intact, his memories of the collective experience vivid, but separate from his individual consciousness. It was like being part of a vast dream, he explained to the debriefing team. I could feel the thoughts and emotions of thousands of other beings, but I never stopped being me. The collective doesn't absorb individual consciousness. It preserves it. This revelation changed everything. The Martian collective wasn't a prison that destroyed individuality. It was a sanctuary that preserved it. The tragedy was that the Martians had forgotten this truth over the millennia, believing that individual consciousness had been sacrificed for the greater good. Over the following weeks, thousands of humans were successfully restored to their bodies. The process was exhausting for both species, requiring constant cooperation between human doctors and Martian biotechnicians. But it worked, and with each success, the relationship between the two species grew stronger. The real challenge was deciding what to do next. The Martians still faced the extinction of their homeworld, and Earth's population remained traumatized by the invasion. Public opinion was split between those who wanted the Martians to leave immediately and those who advocated for cooperation. Rodriguez found himself at the center of these discussions, his role evolving from military commander to diplomatic liaison. The experience on Mars had changed him, giving him a unique perspective on both species struggles. We're not so different, he argued during a United Nations session. Both species want to survive, to thrive, to explore the cosmos. The Martians made a terrible mistake, but it came from desperation, not malice. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chin proposed a radical solution. Using a combination of human and Martian technology, they could begin terraforming Mars in reverse, cooling the planet's surface while maintaining the underground cities, creating a dual-environment world that could support both species. Mars would become a shared world, she explained. Humans on the surface, Martians in their underground cities, with zones of cooperation and exchange between them. The proposal was audacious, but it offered hope for both species. The Martians would gain a stable environment and the chance to rediscover their individual identities. Humans would gain access to revolutionary technology and the opportunity to become a truly spacefaring species. Zarthol was among the first to support the plan. We have been alone for so long, she said. The prospect of sharing our world with another species is both terrifying and wonderful. The negotiations took months, but gradually, a framework for cooperation emerged. The Martians would share their technology and knowledge in exchange for human assistance in rebuilding their civilization. Mars would become a joint colony, with both species contributing to its development. The first joint human-Martian expedition launched 6 months after the end of the invasion. Rodriguez commanded the human contingent, while Zarthol led the Martian participants. Together, they would establish the foundation for a new kind of civilization, one that honored both individual consciousness and collective wisdom. 5 years after the invasion, Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of New Olympus, the first joint human-Martian city built on the surface of Mars. The view was breathtaking, a fusion of human engineering and Martian biotechnology that created structures unlike anything either species had built alone. The city sprawled across the Martian landscape, its buildings growing from the ground like living things while incorporating the geometric precision of human architecture. Humans and Martians work side by side, their different physiologies and perspectives creating innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. "It's beautiful," said Dr. Kovac, joining him at the viewing window. She had become the head of the Joint Biological Research Council, overseeing projects that were revolutionizing both species' understanding of life itself. Rodriguez nodded, watching a group of human and Martian children playing in the city's Central Park. The children represented the future, a generation that would grow up knowing both species as neighbors and friends rather than enemies. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd accepted their original offer," he said. "We'd have survived," Kovac replied, "but we wouldn't have lived. Both species would have remained trapped in their limitations. This is better." The transformation hadn't been easy. On Earth, there were still those who viewed the Martians with suspicion and fear. On Mars, some of the older collective members struggled with the chaos of individual consciousness. But progress was being made, one relationship at a time. The greatest success had been the development of what they called consensual collective consciousness, a technology that allowed beings to share thoughts and experiences voluntarily while maintaining their individual identities. It was like the old Martian collective, but with the crucial difference that participation was a choice rather than a compulsion. Rodriguez had experienced it himself during the joint planning sessions for the colony. The sensation of sharing minds with others while remaining himself was indescribable, like being part of a symphony where every instrument maintained its unique voice while contributing to a greater harmony. "The children are remarkable," Kovac observed, watching the mixed group play. "They switch between individual and collective thought modes naturally, like changing languages." Indeed, the human Martian children represented something entirely new, beings who could exist as individuals or as part collective, depending on the situation. They were the future of both species, the living proof that cooperation was possible. Zarathul approached them, her movements more fluid now that she had readjusted to individual consciousness. The process of rediscovering her personal identity had been painful but rewarding, like learning to walk again after a lifetime of paralysis. "The Council has reached a decision," she announced, her thoughts tinged with excitement. "The next phase of expansion will begin within the year." Rodriguez felt a thrill of anticipation. The next phase referred to the joint exploration of the outer solar system, using combined human and Martian technology to establish colonies on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. It was an ambitious project that would require unprecedented cooperation between the species. "Europa first?" he asked. "Europa first," Zarathul confirmed. "The ice beneath its surface may harbor life forms unlike either of our species. We will need both human adaptability and Martian biological expertise to make contact safely." The prospect of encountering a third form of consciousness was both thrilling and terrifying. But Rodriguez was confident that the lessons learned from a human-Martian cooperation would serve them well in future first contact scenarios. As the Martian sun set over New Olympus, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Rodriguez reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The invasion that had nearly destroyed both species had instead become the catalyst for their greatest achievement, the creation of a truly interspecies civilization. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities. There would be challenges, conflicts, and setbacks, but there would also be wonders beyond imagination, discoveries that would reshape their understanding of life and consciousness itself. For the first time in years, Rodriguez felt truly optimistic about the future. Humanity and the Martians had found a way to preserve their individual identities while working toward common goals. It was a model that could be applied to any species they might encounter in their expansion across the cosmos. As the first stars appeared in the Martian sky, Rodriguez made a silent promise to the children playing in the park below. They would inherit a galaxy where cooperation was possible, where differences were celebrated rather than feared, and where the dream of peaceful coexistence had become reality. The red dawn had passed, and a new day was beginning for both species. Together, they would explore the cosmos, not as conquerors or refugees, but as partners in the greatest adventure of all, the search for understanding in an infinite universe. 20 years after the invasion, the story of the first contact between humans and Martians had become legend. Children of both species learned about the brief war and the cooperation that followed, understanding it as a foundation of their shared civilization. Rodriguez, now in his 70s, served as the director of interspecies relations with Solar Federation, a governing body that included representatives from Earth, Mars, Europa, and the growing colonies throughout the solar system. His experience during the invasion had made him uniquely qualified to handle the complex diplomatic challenges of multi-species society. The scars of the invasion had largely healed, but they were not forgotten. Memorial sites on Earth honored those who had died during the brief conflict, while on Mars, similar monuments commemorated the Martians who had been lost during the chaotic dissolution of the collective consciousness. Dr. Kovac had made perhaps the most significant discovery of the post-invasion era. Her research into the nature of consciousness itself had led to the development of technologies that allowed for preservation and transfer of individual awareness. Death was no longer the end of existence. It had become a transition to a new form of being. The implications were staggering. Both species could now achieve true immortality while maintaining their individual identities. The collective consciousness that had once trapped the Martians had been transformed into a voluntary network where the consciousness of the departed could continue to contribute to society. Zarthal had become one of the first to undergo the transition, her consciousness preserved in the quantum matrices that now formed the backbone of the Solar Federation's information systems. She continued to serve as an advisor and friend, her wisdom available to anyone who sought it. "We have come so far," she observed during one of Rodriguez's regular conversations with her preserved consciousness. "From the desperation that drove us to invasion, to the cooperation that has enriched both our species." Rodriguez nodded, looking out at the bustling spaceport where humans and Martians worked together to prepare the next wave of exploration ships. The partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations, producing technologies and discoveries that neither species could have achieved alone. "What's next?" he asked, knowing that Zarthal's perspective encompassed not just the present but the vast network of consciousness that now connected their civilization. "The signals from Proxima Centauri," she replied. "The pattern suggests another form of consciousness, possibly even more advanced than our own. The question is whether we're ready for another first contact." Rodriguez smiled. The young idealist who had commanded the desperate mission to Mars had become an old man, but his sense of wonder remained intact. The universe was vast and full of mysteries, and each new discovery brought both opportunities and challenges. "We'll be ready," he said with quiet confidence. "We've learned the most important lesson of all, that cooperation is stronger than conquest, and understanding is more powerful than fear." As the latest explorations shipped apart for the edge of the solar system, Rodriguez felt a deep satisfaction. The invasion that had once threatened to destroy both species had instead become the foundation for something unprecedented, a truly interspecies civilization that honored individual consciousness while working toward common goals. The red dawn had given way to a bright new day, and the future stretched before them like an infinite canvas waiting to be painted with combined dreams of two species who had learned to see the universe through each other's eyes. In the end, the greatest victory was not the defeat of the invasion, but the transformation of enemies into partners, of fear into understanding, and of isolation into connection. The story of humanity and the Martians had become a testament to the power of cooperation, and the endless possibilities that emerge when different forms of consciousness choose to work together rather than against each other. The cosmos awaited, vast and full of wonders, and they would explore it together.